Hey, this is not going to be your typical new truck review. If you want all the gearhead stuff about horsepower and approach angle and all that stuff, go somewhere else. What I'm going to share is my experiences with my last Super Duty truck, why I got this new Gasser Super Duty Ford, and some opinions and thoughts that, well, you just won't hear elsewhere. Let's get started. First, I ought to give you an update about Clifford, our 2018 F350 Super Duty. The last I had told you, we had the air conditioner quit, some other things. We had just an engine light on. There were several things that were going wrong. You can find that link to that video in the description or up in whichever corner it's supposed to be. We actually took it to a Ford dealer to have it repaired. I just didn't have time to look into it at all to figure out what was going on. So they said that we had rodent damage. So all the bad things that I said about it, about something going wrong internally that shouldn't have, I guess we just let either a chipmunk or a mouse or a squirrel or something like that get in it and eat the wires. I don't think it would have been Bo here. You wouldn't have eaten the wires, would you? Totally unrelated to that, we had ordered this new truck last December of 21. So it's now December of 22. We got this in like the last day of October or something. So 10 or 11 months we had to wait on this truck. So our trade was unrelated to the troubles we had with Clifford, the red F350. The trade had happened much earlier than that. We just, hadn't got it yet. Let me tell you some things about the new truck and why we chose to trade. We chose to trade largely because of the high trade-in values, right? We had an opportunity to move from a 2018 to a 2022. We thought we'd get it in a month or so, right, when we first traded. And we had the opportunity to trade for, they said $8,000 or $10,000 for the equipped vehicle like we wanted. So let me tell you a little about that equipment. We have had trouble with the ride quality in our previous truck when we go on a long trip. We've been on several long trips with it. A lot of times we took it to Pennsylvania to pick up that Kubota tractor. We've had several long trips like that. With each of those trips, we've had horrible back problems, both Christy and me. And so one thing we noticed in a friend's truck was that the Platinum version, I think you can get it in the King Ranch, but the Platinum version has kind of a three-way adjustable lumbar support. So you can adjust the lumbar in a high position, a mid position, and a low position. The Lariat that we had before had only the high position, and it was way too high for either Christy or I. So we decided that if we could, we wanted to upgrade to a Platinum. And that's what we've got here. At the same time, we had been watching and thinking about moving to the new 7.3 gas truck. So that's what we've got here is a 7.3 gasser. Well, why did we do that? I was looking at several things when I was thinking of using the gas instead of the diesel. Obviously, diesel prices are crazy high. In our situation, we put 35,000 miles on our previous F350 over 4 years. Okay, so not a whole lot of mileage. From my perspective, on the cost trade-offs between the two, if you're going to put a lot of mileage on your truck, then the diesel might finally begin to pay for itself, right? You're going to get better fuel economy with the diesel truck. We'll talk a little more about that in a minute. But with that increased fuel economy, you can finally pay for that diesel upcharge, right? So we've got two upcharges. One is the equipment itself, which is, $10,000, $12,000. It's significant, right? The other upcharge is the fuel price itself. Now, the fuel price is offset by the decreased mileage that you get when you get a gasser. There's another aspect that was compelling to us, and that is a weight savings, right? I'm really trying to stay below this 26,000 pound combination truck and trailer, and the gas is about 700 pounds lighter than the diesel. Unfortunately, I found out that the gross vehicle weight rating on this 7.3 gasser with single rear wheel is actually not up to the 26,000. So the combined weight rating, they said, is like 23.5. I'm not sure if that's relevant. I mean, obviously this is the same truck as the diesel, just a little less power. Let's get into that. Got about 500, just over 500 miles on this truck, about half of them with a trailer so far. I have enough to be able to kind of judge the difference between the two trucks when it comes to pulling capacity and the like. There is no question this truck has less power, okay? The diesel just has so much power, especially at low RPM. Just it feels like you could pull anything. It really is powerful. This gas engine is probably more accurately paired with the loads that we pull. In other words, it's a full load for it to pull. Let me look at the mileage so far. So the first thing is, if you're paying attention to the little miles per gallon reading on your vehicle, you're being misled. So far, I've not seen a single vehicle that reads accurately, and they all read in one direction. They're all over by sometimes 10, sometimes 20%. So in our case, both of our Super Duties have been that way. They'll read at least 15% high. So, when I see people around the coffee shop saying, oh, I get 17, 18 miles per gallon, the first thing I say is, did you measure that, or is that just what that little display reads? And I think there ought to be a law against that. That these manufacturers, if they can make them consistently read 15 to 20% high, they could also make them read accurately. But so far what I've got average on this truck over the 500 miles, just filled it up, was 9.7. Now again, the first tank full was empty, just the truck, because we were driving it home from where we purchased it. The second tank was fully trailer, and that was 7.4. And even then, we weren't on the interstate going 80 miles an hour or whatever, so it was less dramatic than what it would be in a lot of our travel situations. My load wasn't fully loaded. I think I had the 2038R on it, so it could have been more. I think we'll get down to the 6 mile per gallon range on this vehicle. On the other truck, I would get down in the 8s when we were in the worst, right? We would get down maybe to 8 mile per gallon. Over the 35,000 miles we traveled, I got 11.3 total. Now, almost all of that is pulling a trailer. And I did see, if we took a trip without a trailer, we did see upwards of 17. But everything had to be perfect to get that. We will not see that with the gasser, I can see already. We saw 11.2 on our best tank so far, and that did have a little bit of trailer. So I'm guessing somewhere around 12 and a half is what we're going to see empty. So it's going to be a big mileage difference, of course. It's a lot cheaper for gasoline right now. So it's a trade-off, and each person needs to make their own decision. I certainly can't make that for you. Let me talk about the noise for a couple of minutes. One thing I see on the gasser is that I hear almost no engine noise up front. Okay, when the truck is just idling, we hear almost nothing. With the diesel, you heard that constant rumble, right? Just a rumble up front. So the first moment I got in it, I said, Christy, this thing is much quieter than our diesel, and I was all excited. And then I realized that when you accelerate with this rig, especially if you have a trailer and it's under a full load, you hear a huge amount of noise from the rear end, from the exhaust. Okay, somewhere around the exhaust, it's really loud when it's actually trying to use full power, and it's around it. So I hear nothing up front and a bunch out of the exhaust, and that's dramatically different than the diesel. The diesel, all the noise felt like it was up front, even when it was pulling nice and hard. It was up front. I actually think I enjoyed that better overall. But I will say, if I'm driving without a trailer and I'm in fairly easy driving, this machine is quieter overall. This truck is very similar to our 2018 model. There really is not a major redesign between 18 and 22. The biggest difference we're seeing is not because of a redesign, but because of the different trim level. We have at least 20-inch wheels on this truck, and look what it does to the height.
I'm short.
Yeah. So Christy can't see in at all. I can't reach in to be able to fasten the safety chains or or fasten stuff for the gooseneck. I can't reach that anymore.
There's no way I can even climb up this way.
Right.
I can't pull myself up. There's no step. I'd have
Bo could.
Well, Bo could, but I have to pull the step out of the tailgate, which is fine.
It's fine, except when the gooseneck's attached.
Yes.
You can't get in there.
Yeah.
Right? So we needed the step out here. So I showed you in the last episode, we've got some steps. We've got one step to put here, and we've got a step for each side up here. I got a comment on this in the last episode. They said, hey, I got some running boards that were extra length. Well, we had that on our last truck, and it was very nice. I actually recommend getting the running boards that go all the way back. You can get them from Ford. That's what we did, and they go all the way back to the rear tire. We couldn't get that this time. Why? Because the Platinum has these crazy fold-out running boards, which, in my opinion, are just an irritant. I believe you have a software control where you can have them stay out, or you can have them to go in, or maybe there's a delay. I don't know. I haven't even looked at it because it's not relevant to me. They're not long enough for me to be able to use them to get up here. I might be able to sort of like swing a wheel up on a tire. The point is, they're one of these fancy items that doesn't do anything helpful for the truck, in my opinion, right? I would just as soon have a good fixed running board along the whole length of it. Now you're going to say, well, why did you buy the Platinum? Again, it was because of the seats, and that's the way they do these options. You can't pick and choose. It seems like there's a lot of choices when you're actually putting it together, but you can't really pick and choose and get what you want. Now, a lot of my extended family live on gravel roads, and they don't like these power running boards because they don't stay out and protect the truck, right? So when you're on a gravel road, it's throwing rocks up. The tires are throwing rocks up all the time, and these, are actually not deployed when you're in that situation. And even if they were deployed, the bottom side of them is polished. It's meant to be seen. So to me, you don't get one of the advantages of running boards, which is to keep that bottom side down and to let the rocks hit that, and the chips fall where they may, as I might say. So as I showed in the last episode, again, this is not sponsored, but I'm going to put this step on the side here, and hopefully we'll show you that in a future episode. No more about that, but it is from AMP Research. It's called the Bed Step 2. You can do one on each side. And then there's another one that we're going to put in the corner. Again, not sponsored. Take that as you wish. I don't know if it's going to work or work well yet. We'll tell you soon. Our last truck was a Lariat. This is a Platinum. This one's gas. That one was diesel. It was a 2018 model. This is a 22 model. The other options other than the trim level upgrade were the same. Okay, so we didn't get the FX4 package on either one. We did get the gooseneck prep package on both of them. I don't know that there's a lot of other difference in equipment. We traded for $13,500. Let me know what you think about that in the comments section below. In one sense, I felt like it was really good. On an $80,000 vehicle, to be able to move forward 4 years for that amount of money was pretty good. When I began to look at the actual cost we put into that means we spent 40 cents a mile or something. What, 13,500 divided by 35,000 miles? Yeah, that's a fairly costly per mile charge just for the truck. Well, some of that's because we're buying nice trucks, and I get that. You're going to pay a penalty for that. That's just the way it's going to be. Now, we had several small issues with the 2018 F350. One of the most recent, and actually one of the most bothersome to me, was the cameras. The camera on the tailgate and the camera in the front both went bad. Over time, they got to where you couldn't see anything but white. Okay, you could see maybe a glimpse of something in the camera, but not at all. And that detracts from one of my favorite features on both of these trucks, and that is this 360-degree camera. If you haven't seen the 360-degree camera, you need to go check it out at the dealer. It really looks like they run a pole up about 100 or 150 feet and have a camera that shines down and shows you. You can see exactly where you're parking within the lines. You can see whether you're forward and back just perfectly when you're parking. And visibility is very difficult on these trucks, especially for Christy, who has to sit down a little bit lower. It's hard to see over the hood. It's hard to see the corners. That 360-degree camera system is great. But anyway, the cameras began to fade on this. We eventually got a recall notice on this. Was happy to actually see Ford come through on that. But in the recall notice, they said we won't have the parts till March of next year. So the guy that bought my truck, if you happen to be watching this video, there should be a recall and you should be able to get new cameras, at least on the rear because it's a safety issue. I hope on the front because it's the same problem. My understanding from what I read online is that this was because the truck sits outside. If you kept your truck in a garage, you might not have this issue, but the sun or the brightness of being outside is what made these cameras fail. Several other small issues like that you just, people always say, oh, you get so much electronics, that's what's going to fail. Well, we're seeing that now. We haven't seen that on our Honda Ridgeline. It's, you just don't see that on some of these typically foreign-made brands. And the funny thing is they're not foreign-made. I guess they're just foreign designed or something. But the Hondas and Toyotas that we have, we don't see the kind of, silly little electric failures that we see in the big three automakers. So yeah, we bought a brand new truck, and you may be detecting that I'm not entirely happy about it. Yeah, and that would be accurate. In many ways, I'm nervous about being negative on a brand new truck. I am incredibly thankful that we're able to purchase a new truck and get the high-end features and everything. I'm really thankful for that, and I don't want to mislead anyone on that. But I am a little disappointed in what you can get for your money. And I don't think this is Ford specific. I think all three brands, there are only three brands that have trucks that can pull the loads that I need to pull. And that is the 3/4 ton, half ton size, right? So I think all three brands have got a little lax in their designs and in some of their features. And I'd really like to see that improved. And the other thing that I see is that I don't know that they're paying attention to every customer. And one example is here. I'm standing right up next to this truck. I'm 6 foot tall, and this height, we've already mentioned it. I don't know how many people are really out in the rocks of Colorado or wherever trying to drive off-road, and they're worried about angle of approach, and they're worried about driving down into that huge bowl that you see on some of the fancy truck channels. Maybe that's what people are using the trucks for, but clearly everyone that owns a Super Duty around here is not using their truck for that. I think that there would be a market for someone that makes a truck like they used to make them in the 70s, that'll still haul these big loads, that'll still pull these trailers, but that is much, much lower. We could get down, I would think, at least a foot, maybe even 14, 16 inches, and a lot of these trucks would be a lot more useful for the everyday driver. It's fine with me if they want to make a truck that's tall like this. I mean, people put lift kits on them all the time, and more power to you, that's great. But I just don't think the average user wants them that tall. I hear it all the time. I'd like to hear your opinion in the comments section. Do you think that all trucks should be high, or do you think maybe they should build some lower? I don't have any need, I don't think, for the 20-inch tires. The 18s were fine. I just feel like we're kind of getting into cool factor for certain operators versus practicality factor for all operators. This rear suspension and front suspension, as far as that goes, appears to be identical to what I saw on my dad's F350. The first one I remember was his 1975 model. I don't see any significant difference. I'm no expert, but I think there needs to be a change. These suspensions are dated, and we really need an air suspension option. So I looked into this. I fully intended to get an aftermarket air suspension for this truck, and I contacted the folks at Kelderman. I was willing to spend the $10,000 to get an air suspension. I would spend it from Ford. And by the way, I'm certain that Ford could make it and sell it for a less than a $10,000 upgrade, because they wouldn't have to be taking off all these parts and replacing it. It would be much cheaper if the manufacturer would do it that way. So I asked Kelderman, and Kelderman said, oh, you've got the 7.3. We don't support the 7.3. We only support the 6.7 Power Stroke because of the way the exhaust is routed or something. So I don't have an ability, to my knowledge, to get an air suspension. And some of you are going to say, though, the Rams offer an air suspension upgrade. Well, my understanding is it still has leaf springs. It's just a load leveling kit for large loads. It's essentially the additional leaf springs are replaced with airbags to help keep the load level. If I'm wrong on that, please let me know in the comments section below. But I would love to have an air suspension, and I, for one, was willing to pay the $10,000 to get it. I've talked about how fancy the seat is. Not only can you move it in 75 different directions, it's got the 3 different lumbar adjustments. It's also got a massage feature. It's got heating. It's got cooling. Everything you might want, well, except for what I want, right? I want an air suspension on my seat. I want to be able to have fore and aft and up and down, just like the big trucks, right? It's one thing for me, who has driven only 35,000 miles in 4 years, but these trucks, a lot of them are used by hotshot drivers that are making their living in these trucks and spending whatever the legal maximum allowed time in them is, 10 hours a day or whatever. These guys need an air seat option. If you know of an air suspension where I could keep all this fancy part of my seat, please let us know in the comments section. I don't know of any, but I really would like to have some better suspension, both in the main suspension of the truck and in the seat. And it seems to me that for $80,000, an option like that wouldn't be unreasonable. Now, some of the relevant government facts are always listed right here on this sticker here. And that kind of leads me to why I felt like I needed to stick with the Ford. All of my trailers are rated at either 14,000 or 14,500. If I chose a truck that went over the 11,500 rating, then I would be in CDL territory, even empty. And so if a officer wasn't in a good humor, he could put me out of service just pulling the trailer empty if I'm operating commercially. And that's not very much fun to me, not very much fun sounding. So Ford was the only one that actually allowed you to special order with a specific GVWR, gross vehicle weight rating. And the other manufacturers, you don't have any selection over that. Now, since I went with the gas, I'm a little confused on what the combination is here. I think it is the 23.5 instead of the 26. I don't even know for sure if that's important. And so, again, I'm just a guy on YouTube, so don't pay too much attention to these weight ratings. We probably need to talk to Trooper Hoover to see if this is relevant. If you haven't seen our Truck and Trailer Tuesday videos with Trooper Hoover, you should go check those out. We'll put links in the description, at least to the playlist there. He's got tremendous information on towing and other items that we have to do to be legal. So check those out. Oh, there is one more feature that I like on the Platinum that doesn't come, believe it or not, does not come on the Lariat. That's right, Lariat, an expensive truck. With the Lariat, you have to get out your big key fob to get in. You have to fish around in your pocket, find the huge key fob, hit the unlock button to get in, and you have to use a real key. So every time when I would have my hands full, I would have to fish around in my pocket for the key fob. And it was frustrating to me because much less expensive equipment, like our Ridgeline, for instance, has the proximity, right, where you just touch the handle here. Well, with the Platinum, you finally get that. Push button start, proximity for both getting in as well as starting. So that's important. Okay, you've heard some complaints, but please don't misunderstand. I'm very thankful to have a truck that can get the job done, and so the reason I'm sharing these complaints is so that you will have a better understanding of what's available, and you won't necessarily get all the rosy stuff from some of these truck reviewers, and I get it. You know, I've met the guys at TFL Truck. I get it. They're doing their job, and they're catering to the audience that's probably watching these videos. Some of you that are watching our videos are likely more like us, and you're just trying to use the truck to get the job done. Yep, we got a brand new 2022 model in essentially the last month of 2022. The 2023s have already been announced. Major changes. It's going to be better in every way, except for the ways that I've just griped about, right? It's not going to improve the height, probably even taller, probably even better approach angles and departure angles and all that stuff. It's still got the same issues. But there was no way for us to roll over our order into a 23 model. I think ours was one of the trucks that probably sat all summer on the Kentucky Motor Speedway, missing a few parts, maybe the chip, maybe whatever else that it was missing. We eventually got it. They're supposed to start making the 23 models in January of 23. My understanding is if you order one of those, it may be a long wait for that as well. So if you're needing a new truck, you probably better just get in line and order one. And from our standpoint, the used ones remain too expensive compared to the new ones. So I realize people are saying that the prices are going down rapidly, the used auto market's going away and all that, but people still have to have these trucks, right? Not only private individuals, but businesses have to have these 3/4 ton, 1 ton trucks, 2500s, 3500s, 450s, 550s, depending on which brand. They've got to have them. And so I don't see that they're going to go down as much as what we're going to see with some of the other cars. People just, it's not an elective purchase. Hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time on Tractor Time with Tim.
The Lord detests lying lips, but he delights in people who are trustworthy.
I've got just over 500 miles on this truck, about half of them with a trailer.
The cat's in the...
Is he locked in?
Oh, yeah,
She's
well,
locked
the
in.
door's...
The
Yeah.
door's closed. What do you think there, Bo?